We're going to go Big 12. We're going to continue with our previews. Right before the break, I gave you guys a quick rundown of yesterday. Let's put up a graphic, Quan, for them. They can kind of visualize it a little bit. My top three teams in the conference are Oklahoma, Iowa State, and TCU. I do think Oklahoma with the upside offense. Basically, last year was as much of a rebuilding year you're going to see for a team like the Sooners, period. And then I talked about especially offensively. And so for Lincoln Riley, first year under Spencer Rattler with an offensive line that was almost brand new completely. And the defense has just been getting better and better since Alex Grinch took over. I think the upside there to take their overall performance and efficiency to other levels is there. Whether they lose a game in conference and win the Big 12 or just run the table and are 13-0, I think they're still going to be a viable playoff option. So 8-1 or better there. And then TCU over 7.5. I have them. My personal projection is 8.1 wins on average. And then again, that prop, if you can find it, a defense that ranked number one in success rate last year. They were really good in EPA, a lot of the other metrics, and I think obviously with Gary Patterson, they have a defense you can rely on, and then Max Duggan and his upside with the leap he made last year through the air with his accuracy and then his ability to run and scramble. Worth a shot, 9-1, 8-1 to get into the conference final, essentially to face what we assume will be Oklahoma. And I mentioned this, and I'll mention it one more time before we jump to the next three teams. They play Iowa State at the end of the year. So if it comes down to that game, and the winner of it moves in and wins that spot in the Big 12 championship game, you're holding 9 or 8-1 on TCU against Iowa State, which will be extreme value at that point. If you wanted to take a profit, you could, or hedge, or whatever you want to do. But the opportunity will be there. So it's not a bad setup from a schedule aspect. Let's throw up the next three. I mentioned it right before we took that break. Texas, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. Look, Texas is... I'm intrigued to some degree because they're a team that... And I'm not sure if you have an opinion on like Texas as a whole. I just feel like they always kind of get hyped, Quan. And last few years, it's been like, okay, Tom Herman, all right, year 2, year 3, all right, Tom Herman, all right, this is the year. And they just keep getting hyped to a level where now all of the sentiment and anything I've read, it's like their recruiting's great. It's always been like top 6 for a few seasons straight in the country. So they have had the talent. They have the athletes. And for some reason this year, now it's like, oh, well, it's a rebuilding stage because they're bringing in Steve Sarkisian. He's taking over. Look, he's one of the best offensive minds we've ever seen. Defensively, they can't be much worse than what Herman was putting on the field the last 2 seasons. Put up the prices again because I'm gonna refer to him here in a second. Plus, people need a break from my face. This is a team that now everyone is saying, patience, we need to wait, rebuilding year, bringing in the new schemes. Look, I know that Sam Ehlinger's gone, but when it's all said and done, I think Casey Thompson is probably the likely candidate to take over. They also have a top recruit in Hudson Card that could win the quarterback job. They haven't announced it yet. I think most people are assuming Thompson. Regardless, I think that's the concern is like, all right, new scheme, new quarterback. It's a rebuild year for Texas. Look, their talent, man, they grade out. Now getting into my numbers, I believe is my 23rd best team in the country. Let me pull those up. I believe they're even higher with Phil Steele or around the same. And PFF has them at 17th. So they're still top 25 team in the country, if not top 20. They have a schedule that ranks 17th in the country, so they play tough teams. That's always going to be a part of it too. But I'm projected actually at 8.3. So a team that I generally have been betting unders and win totals the last few years, I'm finding that the hype no longer exists. And it's like, patience. Let's wait and see what Texas could be in a few years. And that's usually when you want to buy. You want to buy when everyone's scared, right? You want to sell when everyone's greedy, when everyone's been hyping up Texas at least the last 2 seasons. Really felt like 3. And this is just, I think, a good buying opportunity. So I looked around. You can get 7.5s. I know you have 8 on this chart at -125, -130. I would take that. I think that's at those prices for a 7.5 versus plus money on the 8 is well worthwhile. I like the Texas over 7.5. If for nothing more than my personal projections, I understand. New quarterback, new scheme. Like we've seen Sarkisian from Alabama to the Atlanta Falcons, and like the guy's a genius. He's gonna be fine. I know he's had some of his issues in the past, USC, whatever. Like I forgive people, forgive and forget. He's got a real shot here. I think he'll turn things around, and I think they are going to surprise some people. Because they're a team that everyone now is saying, all right, let's wait and see. It's a rebuild year. So it's just trying to play market perception and just the general public perception in a way that is contrarian. And so I like Texas, which I wasn't anticipating of. Like, again, I'm usually been the other way on Texas the last few years. I think they can absolutely get to 8 wins. I like the 7.5s. at -125, -130. I think those are great prices. We'll move to Oklahoma State. Excuse me. I almost said Ohio State. We did Big Ten last week, if you want to pull it up. We have the videos up and podcasts up, Bets TV. You can check them out. Last Word Cheetah on Apple and Spotify. Little plug there for everyone. Yeah. All two of us.
Transition.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I intended to say Ohio State. I did not. Oklahoma State sitting 7.5. I'll say my personal projection as I pull it up. They are the 27th ranked team for me in the country. I have them at 7.3 wins. So I would, I guess, lean under. Nothing that's worthwhile betting. I think it's an interesting dynamic with Spencer Sanders. He was in year 2 last season, and he hurt his ankle. I believe it might have been in the opener against Tulsa, if I recall off the top of my head. I'm sorry I didn't actually write that down, but I think it was against Tulsa. There was a really weird, low-scoring game, and then Oklahoma State's defense just ended up grading out really, really well across the board by the end of the season. But they had Chuba Hubbard, they had Tylen Wallace. Those weapons are gone, and so when Sanders got back, he finally was healthy again after hurting his ankle in the opener for the final 3 or 4 games, which it was such a weird season anyway. And so when you're in and out, they could never get their offensive rhythm there. I think with the defense they had last year, they really had upside of being an elite Big 12 team. People are saying, well, maybe now they could look. I think the defense is going to drop off to some extent. I think there was a little bit of fluky luck involved with some of their numbers. They're for sure an above average defense, but nothing to the top 10 to 12 scale. And then I'm just not sure Spencer Sanders, even if he makes that leap that everyone anticipated last year, he's able to run the ball and move it and scramble. He just doesn't have the weapons that he had last year. So I think it's kind of going to be a similar vibe overall. I'm a little bit lower than 7.5. If you were leaning under anyways on your end yourself, that's the direction I would look. And then moving to West Virginia at 6.5, I believe I am 6.3 wins. The 6.5s are pretty juiced under anyway. So you probably find some 6s out there anyway. It's nothing worth betting. My only bet across the board on these 3 is going to be the Texas over 7.5s at the -125, -130 price point. But I will say West Virginia, this is what's his name, Neil's second seed. This will be his third. Last year was the second taking over at West Virginia. And honestly, I thought he did a really good job. And defensively, they were another one. I think they graded out 6th in success rate. They were 11th or 12th in EPA. Another team that just was quietly really strong that really didn't have an offense. So similar to Oklahoma State, except their offense wasn't nearly as good as even Oklahoma State's was. Quarterback Jared Doge, I believe his passing grade, if I read, let me read it. It's straight out of PFF. They were breaking down their passing grade numbers, and he said he's put up a 78.9 passer grade since his arrival in 2009. The West Virginia quarterback, referring to Jared Doge, ranks second to Justin Fields in EPA generated over expectation since their database goes back to 2014. So this is a team and opponent adjusted metric that they use. What that essentially is saying is that he hasn't had any help, whether it's scheme, play calling, blocking. They had 0 run game. I believe they were bottom 20 or 25 rushing the football in just about every metric. Yet he's actually over-delivered, over expectation. The EPA above and over expectation is second to Justin Fields since 2014. If you ask that question, you'd say, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, right? Tua, whatever, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, all these guys you think, they were way over expectation. No, Jared Doge has actually performed, given his opportunity, way better than expectation. And if that's the case, and they can at least scheme a little bit better this year, they can get some sort of run game for the guy, and he's able to make the same plays and same passes. It's a really intriguing kind of upside play. Now, again, on average, the defense, I think they lost 2 cornerbacks from their secondary to SEC schools via the transfer portal. Then they lost a few for graduation as well. The defense won't be top 6 to 12 again like it was a year ago anyway. So it's similar, I think, in Oklahoma State's realm where defense won't be as good. Offense, I think, has some room to improve potentially. But overall, it's probably going to end up being a wash. I think the 6.5 is fair. So I'm passing on West Virginia, but we're locking in Texas. I like the 7.5s. But that was interesting. Jared Doge. No one ever would have gotten that in a trivia question if I had given, eventually someone would have if they got the PFF college football preview. But point being, EPA above expectation or over expectation, I believe. EPA OE. Justin Fields, best since 2014. Jared Doge, 2020 West Virginia quarterback. And then there's probably a bunch of names that everyone recognizes too. But that blew me away. So shout out to Doge. Shout out to West Virginia. Maybe they can put something together this year. Insane.